everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the second event of the semester, the Alumni panel. Today we'll be joined by some really amazing artists who are all graduates of, Columbia. I'm really excited to speak to our next guest, Nicole, who is actually the founder, creator of this animation association.
Well, I'm Nicole Restrepo. I graduated in fall 2018. I got hired onto Fancy Nancy within January of 2019. And I've been working there for the last 2 years. Last year, I got a promotion to coordinator, and now I am going to be rolling off onto Mickey Mouse Funhouse. So I will have a nice month off, and that's going to be nice. But yeah, my journey to the industry was a little weird one. They reached out to me. I actually didn't apply for the job. They reached out to me. And so that was very interesting. And I heard some of the comments and questions that were asked beforehand. And I feel like this is a good example of just kind of like taking risk, where I had my first interview when I was still a student at Columbia. And in that interview, they heavily hinted to let them know when I was going to go out there before setting up any type of second interview. And when I actually got the ticket and was like, okay, it sounds like they can't give me the second interview until I actually prove to them that I'm going to be moving out there. So when I purchased my ticket to move out there and I sent that over to the person who interviewed me, within 3 hours, recruitment hit me up and scheduled that second interview. So that was a good hunch. So sometimes risks are good, but you have to pay attention to like the smaller things that might be peppered into conversations, especially like when you interview with somebody like Disney, they'll pepper stuff in there that they want you to pick up on and lead into and stuff. They're trying to show, Disney really wants people who kind of take risks, but what's the word? Takes opportunities that are laid before them, so to speak. So I got very lucky, but that was kind of a terrifying transition because, I didn't have a place out there, when I got that flight, I was like, okay, how do I live out here? I can't get an apartment. I couldn't get a studio apartment with, no job guaranteed. So actually what I did was I found, through Facebook Marketplace, they actually had these smaller apartments and stuff that you'd pay like $900 a month, and you would sign a 3-month contract with them. So I gave myself 3 months, even though I had the interview schedule, I didn't have a guarantee that I was going to get it. So I gave myself 3 months. I gave myself like, okay, if the job doesn't work out, we'll be in the heart of Burbank for 3 months and we can look for other jobs and stuff. And it's brutal looking for apartments in California. Best advice I could give everybody right now is save as much as you can, just little by little. I know it seems hard, but just doing little by little is going to definitely help, because apartment looking in California is brutal, especially when you're going by yourself. And I do agree with what Lillian said about connections and friendships and stuff, because that is helpful if you guys go in as a group going out there as well. With that situation, it did work out very well, but it's like $900, not even for my own room, but for a shared room. It was, I got very lucky though, because the other half of the room didn't get rented out until my last 3 weeks in the place. So it just kind of worked out good. But yeah, that it's, sometimes you got to take risks and stuff, but take risks that are not going to be detrimental to your whole experience and you actually finding a job and stuff, taking risks that the benefits, you got to weigh out the benefits and the pros and the cons. If the pros are weighing out more than the cons, then sometimes it's a risk worth taking. But you have to make sure that it's a reasonable risk that you're taking. With me, I saved up money like a nut when I was working at Columbia, and I worked 2 extra jobs. I did all my side hustling and all that. And I saved and saved and saved and saved. That's why it was easier for me to go out there. But if I didn't do that, it would have been way harder. And I know that other people aren't necessarily in the situations where they can work when they're at school. You know, sometimes they need all their focus to go towards schoolwork, and that's totally fine. You know, that's a totally different experience in itself. And that also can work out as long as you are dedicating time during the week to your portfolio and building it up. You know, don't waste time. Like, just little by little. Even if you dedicate 4 hours a week to portfolio building, within a month, that's, you know, 12 hours that you have towards your portfolio, towards fixings, towards making. You know, it's just finding little time in between the weeks and stuff. That's what helped me my senior year with my solo film, was like, okay, you could dick around during the weekdays and you know you're gonna dick around with the ADHD, but on the weekends you gotta like focus on schoolwork. And that's I would give myself leeway. It's like working with what you have, essentially.
I know a lot of people also like schedule time for like job hunting. So I think us as animation students, we just have to like actually sit down and schedule our time instead of just doing other weird things. But yeah, thank you. What would you say is the most unexpected or maybe hardest part of the post-graduation life?
For me it was when I actually got the job and such. You know, I prepped myself when I was graduating. I prepped myself for like having to look for a job for a year. I prepped myself. I had like a little goal list for myself, and I was like, this is what we're gonna do. And so it was kind of like I hit all of it so fast, and I was lost. I was even at my job trying to find stuff to do and trying to find, like, you know, I guess like, okay, now we have to make new goals. What do we do with that? And that's when I started like working on my own projects outside of work to kind of keep that part of me a little bit busy, you know, to feel like I'm still like hitting goals, you know, creating new goals and all that. But I would say like I would say the hardest part is really when you go onto a show, it's like learning the environment and like the vibes that your crew has, learning more about them and like learning to work with them and all that. It's your first like grown-up experience and all that, and it might be different. I got onto a crew that was very like, you know, a well-oiled machine, punctual, all that stuff. They knew what they were doing. I was on a crew with all the veterans, which that's another thing in itself. It's like not getting starstruck when you're working with people who, you know, worked on cool shit that you like loved as a child. I was the youngest person on Fancy Nancy. And so I got to work with like a lot of people who were in their 50s and 60s who worked on Atlantis and Treasure Planet. And it's like you get all this information and also not having them take the magic out of it. That definitely happened with me when you like when you talk with them and they give you all the tea from behind the scenes and you're like, now I don't know how I feel about this scene. No, I don't, you know, it's try like, you know, still finding the, you know, finding the magic in things and not like, you know, not letting yourself feel so, what's the word? Overwhelmed, so to speak. No, that was a big one. Like not freaking out. Like whenever my coworkers would drop like, oh yeah, we did this thing. I remember one day my director dropped that he worked on a music video with Queen. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I was like trying so hard to not like freak out about that and all that. But yeah, that's going to be a big curve, is when you actually start working with people in the industry and you're going to like, you know, they're just like you. Nobody likes being gushed over. That's not true. There are some people, especially at Disney, who do like being gushed over, and they will make that very clear when they're excited about that.
Speaking of like working with a team, I've heard people say that you get the interview because all of your qualifications match, but the interview is kind of to see your personality and see if you fit well on the team. Would you agree with that?
Yep. For my particular role that I got on Fancy Nancy, it took them a year to find me. Like they interviewed a lot of people because my director is a very particular personality and he hires particular personalities and stuff. And so it took them forever, but that was the thing, was its personality. So those interviews are very, when you have an interview and such, if you don't get the job, don't take that to heart. that's the one thing I would say as well. Don't take that to heart. Don't beat yourself up. Don't, like, unless they give you feedback on things, you know, if they send you a message saying, you know, we went with another candidate, if they don't give you feedback and stuff like that, don't beat yourself up, because chances are it's just personality, and it's not an insult to your personality. One thing that they will always keep in mind is they are always going to try to hire people who will work well with the director's personality or the showrunner's personality or the line producer's personality. You know, they typically hire people in that sense. And with, like, yeah, I would not take it to heart, but yeah, personality is definitely important and all that, you know. Let them talk in the interviews too. You know, you can get a good vibe of what they're looking for usually. Usually my first interview with Disney, I left that interview and I was like, I think I got it. And they're like, you think? And I was like, I don't know. The girl was like super happy and smiley and like cheerful the whole time. And then the guy was just like stonewall the whole time. And as I went on the show, I realized that's just what he does. He does a poker face, and all that. But, you know, sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't work, but, you know, just be yourself, because you don't want to fake a personality to get onto a crew. You don't want to do that. You don't want to fake your, you know, you don't want to hype yourself up and then you get on the crew and you're lost because you can't vibe, like not even vibe, but like, you know, you can't handle, like there could be conflicts with personality types, because that does happen. And I've experienced that too within my own crew, you know. So be yourself. That's the best thing I could say, is be yourself. Don't be nervous, you know, and just talk to them like they're people. But obviously, like, respect as well. But like, yeah, talk to them like they're people. Don't, you know, if you get weird, they'll get weird.
That's so helpful for, I think, all of us. A question from Paul in the chat is, a lot of people say that the hardest part of breaking into the industry, or is breaking into the industry. Does it really get easier from there? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, it does. So breaking into the industry is hard because, especially if you don't have an internship on your resume or whatever that stands out, it is hard because it is through connections and all that. But when you do break into the industry, and especially if you can get a solid year under your belt, that's a year of experience. That's a year of you learning, regardless of whatever position you have. It's stuff that you can put on your portfolio. And also when you get into the industry, that's more opportunities for you to network and really shine when you're on that crew. Like, if you have a good relationship with that director, if they go on to another show, you'll be in their mind, you know. If they know somebody who needs somebody, you know, they'll be like, oh, I have the perfect person in mind. It really is, once you break into the industry, it does get easier. The only thing that would make it harder is if you start, like, I guess, if you don't do a good job at your job. That could be the only thing that hurts, honestly. Which actually I do want to chime in with that, because one thing that I've noticed, like, since graduating with me, I work in production, and that's like, I want to do production. Not really, I do art for me, and it's not my thing. But with, I've noticed that they're like, when other people have graduated and gone out there, I've noticed that some artists who don't, you know, get into the industry right away will start looking at production jobs. And that's fine. But anticipate that if you're in there for a production job, you're doing production work. You know, if you don't do the production work, if you don't understand it, you're going to be lost. And it's actually going to be detrimental to a production if you have a PA that doesn't, like, know how to use Excel sheets and all that. I would say, if you are interested in production job, because if you do have an understanding for production, I would say it's a good place to start. If you're not really sure what exactly you want to do in the industry, but you know you're kind of good at management and you're kind of good with the behind the scenes stuff, I would suggest production. But I would suggest make sure that you understand the tools that's going to be required of you. Because if you put something down in your portfolio and you don't actually understand it, that's going to shine through within the first week or two. You know, you'll have that learning curve will be hard for you to, you know, straighten out and such. It's going to stand out. So I would say, for anybody who's interested in production, gain knowledge on shotgun. Shotgun is a very important thing to have knowledge on. Excel sheets are always a good thing to get basic knowledge on and understand. You even making like practice template sheets. And stay on top of organization in your own files and on your own computers. You know, that's going to be really what production work. A lot of that is organization and filing away.
You mentioned people remembering you as you break into the industry. This isn't quite much of a question, but have you seen people who get kind of like, they have a really negative attitude and people remember them from production to production? And do you have like any advice for how to like avoid that, becoming that person or any of that stuff?
Oh, that's a good question. And yes, I have seen that. We actually have a character designer who is having problems rolling onto other shows and such. And it's like, she's awesome. It's just, she's got I love Linda's attitude, but she does have like, she's got a snark to her. And like some directors don't like the talk back and such, you know. But I would suggest, be mindful of your role, and be mindful of whoever you're talking with. Like, be mindful of your director's role, and always keep in mind that like you can suggest stuff, but like being able to read the room and finding a right time to be able to like suggest stuff and all that, not just throwing stuff out during like meetings, obviously when they're like in like, you know, in depth in the storyboards and all that, you know. I would say be mindful and be respectful, and also realize that like, you know, you're basically you are an extension of the director. You are helping the director get out his vision and stuff, you know. If you like disagree a lot with your director, that could be something that builds up like a nasty, like not like a not great reputation, as like, you know, not being able to like be guided, so to speak, because that does happen. It does happen.
The next question is, since we know you've had like a very successful like break into the industry, but do you have any advice you wish you could have given yourself when you were graduating?
The advice I would give myself with breaking into the industry, more cover letter practice. Honestly, I'm the worst even now, like even with having to like you know, apply for jobs for the last like month and stuff. Like I am the worst at cover letters. I get very tripped up on them even still, even now. So, you know, finding like like practicing more with cover letters, and like not doing a cover letter super last minute, like you have a job to apply for and that's why you're typing it out. Like actually like taking the time to just start like getting some drafts out, because that's going to help you when it actually comes times to making a cover letter, is getting used to talking about yourself like you're selling, you know, your abilities. You want to talk yourself up in your cover letter. And I know that can be hard because some people, you know, some people are very humble. Some people downplay their skills. And that's something that I did. That's something that actually hurt me this last month with the job search. Was we had the meetings and I would talk about stuff, but I wasn't talking about like all of the things I did. I was downplaying what I did. And that's what I got the feedback on. And so, yeah, just like being, I guess that advice would just be like being aware of your skills, and not, you know, don't let people make you feel like you're, don't let people make you feel like you have an ego or a head just because you're trying to get yourself out there. You know, don't let people make you feel like, you know, oh, well, you're cocky because you say this and that. Well, if you have the work, if you've gotten the feedback, you know, it's coming from a base. It's not coming from nowhere, you know. Listen to what your teachers have to tell you. That's definitely another thing to help with cover letters as well, is listen to the feedback your teachers give you when they talk about your strengths, you know. You can play those up. That's definitely what helped me, was like listening to my line producer and all that and being like, those are my strengths. Gotcha. Everybody's introverted in our industry. There's a lot of introverted people in our industry. That's not something you really have to worry about being too introverted. But unfortunately, what does hurt is like not being able to get out of that introverted bubble to be able to like network and follow up and doing all that stuff. You know, that's the strong, the people in our industry who have been able to break through. It's because they've been able to work with their introvertedness, and they realize and they recognize that they have to put themselves out there. It's a good thing to work on too.
The next question is, how do you handle juggling expectations versus reality? Like perhaps you thought you were going to get a job or it didn't happen, but how do you push through all of that?
Actually, I do have a good example of this. In summer 2018, I had an internship at Sony, and it was awesome. It was for Mitchell's versus the Machines, which Paul asked a question of like, what are you excited about coming out this year? And obviously it's Mitchell's versus the Machines because it's going to be great. We were in talks to basically get me to come back on as a PA towards the end of the summer. I remember during my last weeks there, I was literally like, I won't go back to school. I'll just stay here. If you guys like want me, like, I'm totally cool with that. And they really wanted me to go and get my degree. And so we had plans for me to actually go back and work for Sony after graduating. But it wasn't until I think it was like a week or two before CTN that year where I got the email saying like stuff happened and the position was no longer available. And it's like very disappointing, of course. But that was like the first lesson I had on timing is everything in the industry, and to not take things personally. That's a big thing I should like stress is like, don't take things personally. Really understand our industry moves with timing. Like, you know, if the timing is right, things just end up lining up altogether. Like that's like with me getting hired by Disney, that wasn't expected. It was through me getting the like no from Sony and like, you know, that stuff not working out. It's all about timing. Getting no's and stuff, don't see that as like discouraging. That's the biggest thing I want to say is like, never stop applying. Even if you don't think that you're strong enough, like a good example is before I even went to Columbia, I was studying pre-vet at Stevens College. And oh God, it's still so embarrassing. So I applied for a storyboard position on Steven Universe. And you want to know what was in my portfolio? Gemstones. Did not get the job, but it was like putting that out there. Like I didn't know, I just put my stuff out there. And I believe I also applied for the Pixar internship, and I didn't get that either. But one thing that I've learned from like going to CTN and talking with recruiters is they like seeing progress, and they really can see progress when you're applying each year. If you actually are adjusting your portfolio based off of feedback that you get from a recruiter and re-hit them up with that really impresses them. It really shows them that, you know, the things that they were telling you, you're listening to them, and they can like look at you growing and stuff. And it's never gonna hurt you. You know, applying too early for things, like you might get a no, but like if you apply the next year and you like really had some like cool classes and stuff and you got your portfolio, they're going to notice it. They're going to notice that big difference. So I would say don't be embarrassed about applying for things. Don't be embarrassed if you don't get things, you know, it's just keep trying, you know, it's all about effort.
Yeah, thank you so much for elaborating on that. Also, this is for the Animation Association current members. Sony is coming to speak with us next week for a recruiters panel. So please register for that on Handshake. And Jonelle has given us some time to talk about the club there. So they're going to have some like on-campus interviews. So please register on Handshake, everyone, because Nicole, I think you had a good time at Sony, but I'm not going to make that assumption.
It's one of my favorite places. Like, I still hope I end up back there someday eventually. It's a fun work environment. It's very chill. It's very relaxed, very different than Disney. And like the fun fact that I always tell people, because everybody is always really surprised by it, I didn't want to work at Disney. They were not really somebody who, like, they found me. And I do mean that, like, because I wasn't very interested. And even when I had the interview was going good. And, you know, it was going good. And then they dropped how much I would be making. And then I was like, you know what? I want to work at Disney, because it's like, I knew how much the other PAs got paid at other companies. And I was like, that's a big difference. And that's what Disney does. Disney and Netflix, they throw the money.
That's really great to know. And this next question, I'm really excited to hear your answer on it, because I know you've been working on some really cool stuff. I'm pretty sure we've all seen it on Instagram. So what's your dream job, and what steps are you taking to get there?
Well, initially, and it's still like, I still want to be an executive producer, you know, that's definitely the track that I've been going on. But within my first year of working at Disney, I started developing and working on my own shows, and actually trying to put myself more in a showrunner spot. And I, you know, shadowed like my director and all that. And the motivation for actually wanting to be a showrunner was actually going to my first town hall at Disney, and then hearing them be like, this is what we're looking for. And then me getting very frustrated that like, they're asking for very specific things, gender, like catered towards certain gender. And that just means like, you know, this whole crowd of people who've been working at Disney, you don't know what they're going to be spitting out. They're probably just going to be spitting out like rainbows and, you know, all that stuff for girls. So I was actually motivated to like start creating my own show, because I was very frustrated at things that were being made, and, you know, wanting to put some more stuff out there. And then it just kind of just kept clicking. Like the people on production would point out that I had like good showrunner mentality and all that, and like leadership and all that. And it's I really just work on these projects because I'm trying to create something that's different. I want to create something that's going to like have a good message and like actually be engaging for like different people and all that, and like focus on experiences that we haven't really seen. Like the recent project I'm working on, we have a lot of themes of mental health in it that are very underlining, and psychology is definitely inspired in that, and sociology. You know, I put a lot of like the things that I nerd out about, I usually put those in my shows. And I've been very fortunate to actually be able to pitch twice to Disney. So I have like the pitching experience has been really cool. And
Eduardo asked, what softwares and gadgets did you have to buy after graduation? How much are you paying for the stuff every year, if you don't mind answering? Smiley face.
I have only bought, and that was like, November, I actually bought it. I have Storyboard Pro, which is like $60 a month, which is like, gross. And I guess I still pay for my Photoshop and Adobe Cloud and all that. And I honestly don't really, I think it's probably like 60 as well.
And then Henry, going back to, like you mentioned, submitting fan art in your portfolios, Henry asks, should you apply even if your work is bad so they see improvement, or it can just be so weak that it's not even looked at?
I would say, yeah. I would say yes, because even if the work is considered bad, you know, if you spend the next year really honing your craft, really learning more, taking more classes at Columbia to really like build up skill, it will be impressive when you reapply and your skills can be shown through. It will be impressive. Like, oh my God. I remember the first resume that I ever applied for Sony, and oh my God, it was so bad, but I thought it was awesome. I really thought it was awesome. And I applied, and I remember being bummed out. I think that was like my it was my junior year. And I was like, it wasn't until the next year when I was applying and I got to see what I applied with last year. And I was like, oh my God. But it definitely helps, because when they saw the more up-to-date resume that was stylized and stuff, it definitely showed them this learning curve, like the growth. So I would say, yeah, don't be discouraged to, don't be discouraged to do that. It does help with the bigger companies. It helps because they have everything, like they have their own filing systems in the server and stuff, so they can backtrack and stuff. The bigger companies, I'm not necessarily sure how the smaller companies do, but I do know the bigger companies do all that. And don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, that was another reason, like with the Sony internship, I The first year where I was applying for it, I actually reached out on LinkedIn to somebody who was a production coordinator. And I was just like, this was around the time where I was kind of feeling out production. And I just messaged him and I was like, hey, I see that there's a production internship open and I'm a little bit curious about production. Can you give me some insight on how production looks like at Sony? And it started a dialogue, and I went to CTN every year and I actually got to meet him the next year, and we set up a good dialogue and stuff. And he actually pushed for me actually. And I'm very thankful for that. But like, it was just through dialogue, you know, no anticipation, no pressure, no asking him for anything, just talking to them like they're people and just asking them for advice, you know, asking them what it's like, you know, they love answering that type of stuff.